Today's lesson is going to be on ratio. So we are going to be looking at calculating ratio problems like direct proportion and inverse proportion, calculating ratio problems like proportional division, and solving problem questions involving ratio. So ratio means the amount of one thing compared to another. For example, here we've got 2 oranges and 3 apples. So we have 2 oranges to every 3 apples, which means the ratio is 2 to 3. If we increased or decreased either part of the ratio, we must do the same to the other side. And this is known as direct proportion. And you might deal with this when you are at work and dealing with working out the health and safety notices of staff to children and things like that. So you'll deal with ratio a lot in your daily working. And it's really important to remember if we increase or decrease either side of that ratio, we must do the same to the other side. So for example, when we're calculating ratio, it's always best to find out what one part is equal to and then multiply by the parts that you need. So for example, the ratio of juice to water is 1 to 2. This means for every 1 part of juice, 2 parts of water are needed. So if a question asks you how much water would you need if you use 300 millilitres of juice, the best way to calculate it is to do these steps. So we write out the ratio, so 1 to 2, and write out the letters under to what each corresponds to. So 1 represents juice, 2 parts represents water. We know that 300 millilitres is 1 part as the ratio for juice is 1. So because we need 2 parts of water for every 1 part juice, we multiply 300 by 2, so the answer is 600. So for example, 300 is juice, water, we know is 2 parts, so we times that by 2, which gives us 600 millilitres. So using the ratio of apples to oranges as 2 to 3, how many apples would there be if there were 4 oranges? So let's have a look. Write out the ratio, so 2 to 3, and write the letters out under. So we know 2 is oranges and 3 is apples. Now we know that we need 4 oranges. Now, we know that 4 is equal to 2 parts. So an easy way to do it as well is see how we get from 2 to 4. So we times it by 2. And then we do the same to the other side, a little bit like we did with fractions. So times by 2, which gives us 6. So for every 4 oranges, there will be 6 apples. How many apples would there be if there were 6 oranges? So we write the ratio out again. We write our O and A, but now under the O, we're going to put 6. How do we get from 2 to 6, which is 3, times by 3? We do the same to the other side, times by 3. 3 times 3 is 9. Fantastic. So our answer is 9. Then, how many oranges would there be if there were 30 apples? So now we do the opposite. So we go 2 to 3, and we've got O to A again, but this time on our right-hand side, we've got 30. We say to ourselves, how do we get from 3 to 30? Well, we times by 10. So we do the same to the other side again. So 2 times by 10 is 20. So we've got 20 oranges. And that is how we do direct proportion. Sometimes direct proportion would be written in word problems. So sometimes ratio may not be written with the symbol with the dot and dot and may be given to you in words and phrases like amounts or parts. For example, Mark and Alan go for a meal. They split the bill with Mark, paying 2 parts, and Alan paying for 1. If Mark pays £20, how much Alan pays? So write the ratio in numbers and follow the method from before. So write out the ratio 2 to 1 and write the letters under. So we know 2 parts is Mark and 1 part is Alan. We then know we add in our new numbers. So we know if Mark pays £20 and if 2 parts is 20, we've times by 10. We then times by 10 for the other side, which is 10. So we know that Alan pays 10. And then that will tell us that the whole meal cost £30. So a sorbet is made from 1 part honey and 4 parts strawberry. 340 grams of strawberries are used. How much sorbet is made in total? So we're going to write out our ratio. So 1 part honey, so 1 to 4 parts strawberry. So 1 to 4, 1 is H, 4 is strawberries, so S. 340 grams of strawberries are used. So we know that 340 is 4 parts. So to get at 1, 340 divided by 4, what we're going to do is we're going to put that into bus stop. 3 into 4 doesn't go. So we're going to carry 3 into 34. 8. 2 left over. 4 into 25. So we know that 1 part is 85. So we times that. We times that by 85. We're timesing that by 85. Then it becomes 85 grams of honey. We then add those two together because it wants how much is made in total. Gives us 400 grams. Okay. Then a simple biscuit is made from 4 parts milk, 9 parts self-raising flour. If 270 grams of self-raising flour is used, how much biscuit is made in total? So we know our ratio is 4 to 9 biscuit to self-raising flour. We know 217 grams of self-raising flour is used. So we need to work out 1 part. So 270 divided by 9 is 30 grams. So now we've times that by 30. So we times the other side by 30, which is 120. And our question is made in total. So 120, add 270 leaves us with 390 grams of biscuit. And that is how we do direct proportion. So sometimes with ratio questions, you might be asked to calculate amounts of capacity, so millilitres and litres, and weight in grams and kilograms, where you'll need to convert between the measurements. Remember, there are 1,000 millilitres in a litre and 1,000 grams in a kilogram. So to go from millilitres to litres, we divide by 1,000. And to go from litres to millilitres, we times by 1,000. So, for example, how many litres are in 1,500? We divide it by 1,000, which gives us 1.5 litres. And how many millilitres are in 6.5? We times by 1,000, which is 6,500 millilitres. We then do the same for grams and kilograms. So there are 1,000 grams in 1 kilogram. So grams to kilograms is divide by 1,000, and kilograms to grams is times by 1,000. So how many kilograms are in 3,000 grams? We're going to divide by 1,000, take away our 3 zeros, 3 kilograms. And how many grams are in 4 kilograms? We times by 1,000, which will then give us 4,000 grams. And that is how we do our conversions when we're doing a ratio. So we have these questions here which deal with direct proportion where we're going to have to look at changing units. So Jenny wants to make a jug of fruit squash. To make the squash, she needs to mix juice with water in the ratio 1 to 3. How much water will she need if she uses 200 millilitres of juice? So we know our ratio is 1 to 3, and we know we've got squash to water. And if she uses 200 millilitres of that, we know 1 part is 200. So 3 parts, we must times by 200, which is 600. So we know 1 jug equals 800 millilitres of squash. Now our second part of our question says Jenny wants to make 3 jugs for the party. Using the same quantities above, how much total squash will she have in litres? So we know 1 jug is 800 millilitres. And we want 3 jugs, so we times by 800 times by 3, which gives us 2,400 millilitres. We then want 2,400 millilitres into litres, so we divide by 1,000, which gives us 2.4 litres. And then we're doing the same now with grams. So Andrew is baking a cake. He mixes butter, sugar and flour in the ratio 2 to 2 to 1. How much does the butter and sugar is used if 100 grams of flour? So 2 to 2 to 1. And we know it is, because it's written in that order, B, S, F. So butter, sugar, flour. And we know 100 grams of flour is used. And 100 grams is 1 part. So we've times it by 100 to get our 1 part. So to get 2 parts, we're just going to double that 100. So we know 200 grams of sugar is used and 200 grams of flour is used. So how much does the total cake weigh? 200 add 200 add 100 is then 500 grams for 1 cake. Our then part of our question asks us how much do 5 cakes weigh? So then we do 5 times 500, which is 2,500 grams, but our question asks us for kilograms. So now we have to do 2,500 divided by 1,000, which gives us 2.5 kilograms, and there are our answers. Okay. So, problem question for us. James and Simon go to a restaurant. They split the bill in the ratio 2:3. James pays £27. How much does the meal cost altogether? So whatever we do, we must always write the ratio first. So we do 2:3 and the letters underneath. So we know James is 2 parts and Simon is 3 parts, because that's how it's written in the question. So James is first, 2 is first. Simon second, 3 second. We know in our question that James pays £27. So we know 2 parts is 27. So what we do is we work out how we get from 2 to 27, or 27 divided by 2, which leaves us with £13.50. So we've times it by £13.50. Then we're going to do 3 times £13.50. £13.50. £13.50. £13.50. Which leaves us with 0, 5, 1, 10, £40.50 that Simon pays. And then what we're going to do then is we're going to add them together. So £40.50 and 27 gives us a total bill of £67.50. Brilliant. Well, okay. Our second ratio question that we're going to have a look at is what we call proportional division. Proportional division means to divide the total amount by the parts that you need. So say 2 people wanted to share £10 in the ratio 2:3. Your first step is to add the ratio together. So 2 add 3 equals 5. We then divide the amount by the ratio total. So 10 divided by 5 equals 2. And that £2 is equal to 1 part of the ratio. We then multiply that 1 part by the parts that you need. So we know we need 2 parts. So we do 2 times 2, which is £4. We need 3 parts. So 3 times £2 is £6. And that gives us how much each part is. Then to check your answer, these 2 numbers should then make your original. So we know our original is £10. So 6 add 4 does make 10. So we know that our calculation's correct. So we're going to have a go at these 2 questions. There are 500 people at a football match. The ratio of adults to children is 3:2. How many adults are at the match? So we add our ratio. 3 add 2 equals 5. And then we divide the total by the ratio to get 1 part. So 500, which is our total, divided by 5 equals 100. So that's 1 part. And we are looking for adults, which is 3 parts. So what we do is we do 3 times 100, which tells us there are 300 adults at the match. Okay, question 2. In Yorkshire, there are 2,000 pets registered to families. The ratio of dogs to cats is 3:1. How many dogs are registered in Yorkshire? So we add ratio. So 3 add 1 is 4. We then divide by the ratio. So 2,000 divided by 4 equals 500, and that's 1 part. And then we need to have a look at how many dogs. So ratio of dogs is dogs. So we then do 3 times 500, which tells us 1,500 dogs are registered in Yorkshire. And that is proportional division. So our last topic that we are going to look at is what we call inverse proportion. So inverse proportion is similar to ratio, so direct proportion. However, when one number goes up, the other goes down at the same rate. So, or when one number goes down, the other goes up at the same rate. So think more workers reduces the time a job is done, or increasing your speed reduces time. So it's all about one thing being increased that causes the other to be decreased. But how might we work that out? Well, there is a nice, simple method when it comes to inverse proportion. And what's really important to understand is inverse proportion questions will always contain 3 numbers, and it will always be worded like the following. So it takes 2 painters 4 days to complete a job. So it'll always be worded something like this. Work out how many days it would take 1 painter. So what we do is we multiply the first number, which is 2, by the second, which is 4. So we do 2 times 4, which is 8. And then our second step, divide the answer by the last number, which is 1. So 8 divided by 1 equals 8. And it takes 8 days for 1 painter to do the job that it took 2 painters 4 days to do. Okay, let's now have a look at an example question. It takes 3 painters 6 days to complete a job. How many days would it take 2 painters? So our first step, we do 3 times 6, which is 18. And then we do 18 divided by our last number, 18 divided by 2. And our answer is 9 days. And we have now done inverse proportion, the simplest of all of them, and one of my favourite, because it's got a nice, super easy method. So now we're going to have a look at 2 problem questions to do with ratio. First, a cafe are deciding on the perfect blend for their coffee. They decide that the perfect blend is made up of Colombian and Sri Lankan beans in the ratio 2:1. So what I'm going to do, because it's quite a wordy question, I'm going to start highlighting things. So Colombian and Sri Lankan in the ratio 2:1. James is the manager and wants to promote their new blend at the event. At the event, he will make 150 cups of coffee. Each cup contains 55 grams of coffee beans. Calculate the amount of beans James needs for the event. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to look at is what type of ratio question am I being asked? Right, I know because of the word format, it's not inverse proportion. Could it be direct proportion? So we know it is not direct proportion because we do not have the amount that 1 beans is. We don't have how much Colombian beans is. We don't have how much Sri Lankan beans is. We only know that in 1 cup of coffee, it contains 55 grams of coffee beans, but we don't know the split of how many are Colombian and how many are Sri Lankan. So it means the question is proportional division. Because we have a total. Now, there are 2 ways to approach this question. We can work out how much Colombian and Sri Lankan are in 55 grams and then multiply it by the amount of coffee, or find out how much coffee beans we need in total. I would do that method. So we know that 1 cup equals 55 grams of beans. So how much would be in 150 cups? Well, we need to multiply that 55 by 150. And we can do this because this will be one of our calculator questions. So I'm going to pop in my calculator 55 times 150, which gives me 8,250 grams of beans. Now, because you've got a total, we can do proportional division. So, as before, we add our ratio. So step 1, add ratio. We know it's 2:1, which is 3. So 2 add 1 divide 3. And then we divide by the ratio. So we know our total is 8,250. So 8,250 divided by 3 gives us 2,750. And that is 1 part. And now we multiply by the parts we need. So we know we need 1 part. Oh, we've already got that, so we don't need to do it, which is 2,750. But we also need 2 parts. So we're going to do 2,750 times by 2, which gives us 5,500. And that is it. Oh, but it isn't, because our question's asking us for it in kilograms. So we now need to divide both numbers by 1,000 to get our answers. So it'd be 2.75 kilos and 5.5 kilos. And we've got our answer. Colombian beans, we know, was the 2 parts, so 5.5, and Sri Lankan is our 2.75. And we have our answer. So it's all about finding, if you've got a total proportional division, if it's worded 6 painters, 6 technicians, things like that, it's inverse proportion. If you've got 1 part of the ratio, then it's then direct proportion. Okay, so let's now have a look at this. A milkshake bar creates their milkshakes in the ratio chocolate bar milk and ice cream in the ratio 1:3:1. If each milkshake is 500 millilitres, how much ice cream would be needed for 200 milkshakes in litres? Okay, so first things first, do we have a total? Yes. So we have our total here. So we know it is a proportional division question, but we need to know how much 200 is. So we're going to do what we did before. 1 milkshake equals 500 millilitres. So then 200 milkshakes equals 500 times 200, which tells us 500 times 200 is 100,000 millilitres of liquid, okay, not of anything. Then we need to know how much ice cream. So we're only looking now for one specific part of that ratio. So we add the ratio. So 1 add 3 add 1 gives us 5. Then we divide by the ratio. So 100,000 divided by 5 is 20,000 millilitres is 1 part. We know that ice cream is 1 part. So we know that ice cream for 200 milkshakes, we need 20,000 millilitres. But we want our answer in litres, so we're now going to divide that by 100. So we need 20 litres of ice cream. And that's problem 2 question done. And then we're on our last one, and our lovely little Paddington bear. So a toy factory is organising their new production of Paddington bears. Each bear requires stuffing in the content of 1.8 kilograms of stuffing. The stuffing content must be distributed between the head, body, and legs in the ratio 1:3:2. Calculate how much stuffing in grams is needed for the head, the body, and the legs. So what we can do is convert first. So we know that 1.8 kilograms times by 1,000 gives us 1,800 grams of stuffing to be distributed. So now we have a total between the 1, the 3, and the 2. So what we do, as before, we add ratio. So 1 add 3 add 2, which is 6. And then we divide by the ratio. So 1,800 divided by 6 is 300 grams is 1 part. Then we multiply by the parts we need. So we know 1 part is 300. So head is 300 grams because it's 1 part. We then know the body is 3 parts. So body is 300 times by 3, which is 900 grams. And then the legs is 2 parts, which is 600 grams. And then if we added that together, 900 and 600 is 1,500, and 300 is 1,800. And we have completed our last and third ratio problem question. So hopefully now you are more confident in direct proportion, inverse proportion, and proportional division.